morning began like any other on Earth. People woke to the sound of alarms, the laughter of children, the noise of busy streets. Planes crossed the skies, ships moved across oceans, and millions of humans lived their normal lives without knowing. That history was about to change forever. Then it happened. At first, it was just a strange light in the sky. Farmers in fields, workers on rooftops, and children playing in schoolyards pointed upwards, their voices filled with surprise. A tier of silver opened across the blue heavens, stretching wider and wider until the clouds themselves seemed to flee from it. From that blinding crack in the sky, a massive ship appeared. It was larger than any mountain, larger than any city. Its shadow stretched across the oceans and continents, turning day into twilight. Fear gripped the world. Cars stopped in the middle of highways. Teachers froze in classrooms. Soldiers reached for radios, waiting for orders that did not come. For the first time in human history, every person on Earth looked up at the same moment, their hearts beating as one. And then, a voice spoke. It was not carried by speakers or machines. It was not limited by language or distance. The voice entered the minds of every human, soft but commanding, strange but understandable. We come in peace. We are the Envoys of the Galactic Union. We seek friendship with your kind. The words echoed inside skulls, chilling and mesmerizing all at once. In villages and cities, people fell to their knees, some in prayer, some in terror. Others raised their fists to the sky, demanding answers. The voice did not return. The ship simply hovered, silent and unmoving, like a god watching its creation. Governments scrambled. In Washington, Moscow, Beijing, Islamabad, and London, leaders shouted into phones and microphones. Fighter jets were scrambled, but they never fired. Satellites focused on the ship, but no weapon dared strike. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries, had written stories of it, filmed movies, painted images of first contact. Yet when it came, it was nothing like they imagined. It was too real, too overwhelming, too sudden. The ship was not alone. Smaller craft broke away from its belly, like drops of silver falling into the atmosphere. They glided down with eerie grace, moving toward great cities across the planet. New York, Tokyo, Cairo, Rio, London, Sydney. They landed not with fire, but with silence, their shining surfaces reflecting the faces of thousands who gathered in wonder. When the first envoys stepped out, the crowd gasped. They were tall, thin, their bodies wrapped in robes of white and silver. Their skin glowed faintly, as if light itself lived within them. Their eyes were not like human eyes. They were pools of pale light, impossible to read. Yet their smiles were soft, their gestures calm. They raised empty hands, showing no weapons. "Do not fear us," one of them said, its voice carrying across the square. "We bring peace, knowledge, and unity." Some humans cried with joy. Others wept with dread. The world did not know whether to cheer or to run. For hours, the envoys spoke in public squares, promising friendship and sharing gifts, crystals that glowed with endless power, small devices that healed wounds in seconds, and strange food that never spoiled. To many, it was a miracle. To others, it was the beginning of the end. In the skies above, the great ship remained, still and silent, its shadow always watching. It never left, never moved. It was as if the heavens themselves had been occupied. That night, when the world tried to sleep, the fear would not leave. Some dreamed of golden futures with alien allies. Others dreamed of chains and prisons. Mothers held their children close. Soldiers stood guard with their hands on their weapons. Priests whispered prayers asking if humanity had been blessed or cursed. And somewhere in the silence, an old general looked up at the silver ship and whispered words no one else could hear. "They say they bring peace. But peace from strangers is a dangerous gift. It may cost us more than we can pay." The world did not know it yet, but the story of humanity had just entered a new chapter, a chapter written not only by humans, but by those who came from the stars. The days after the arrival were filled with chaos. Across Earth, News channels could not stop showing the silver ship that hung over the planet like a silent moon. Some called it a blessing. Some called it an invasion. No one could agree. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, the largest emergency meeting in history was held. Leaders from every nation crowded into the chamber, their faces pale, their voices tense. Soldiers stood at the doors. Cameras flashed, but the weight of fear drowned everything. The Secretary General rose to speak, his voice shaking. "We are facing something greater than any of us. These beings call themselves envoys of peace. But can we trust them?" The question hung in the air. Some leaders shouted in support of welcoming the aliens. Others slammed their fists, demanding caution. "They bring gifts," said the president of a small island nation, holding up a glowing crystal that had been delivered by the envoys. "This crystal powers an entire city. No pollution, no cost, no danger. Our people need this." "They bring lies," growled a general from another country. "History tells us, first comes peace, then comes chains. We must not be fools." The chamber erupted in noise. Some argued for hope, others for war. But among the shouting, one man's voice rose above the storm. He was old, his hair white, his uniform heavy with medals. General Marcus Hale of Earth's Defense Council stood tall, his eyes sharp. "Peace envoys," he said slowly, "are often the first step before armies. They say friendship, but they watch our defenses. They say unity, but they study our leaders. Ask yourselves, why do they give us gifts so freely? What do they gain? No one gives away power for nothing." The room fell silent. His words struck like a blade. Some looked away in guilt. Others nodded with grim agreement. Outside the chamber, people celebrated. In city streets, crowds cheered as envoys healed the sick and made fountains of clean water appear. Children laughed as alien toys floated in the air, glowing with colors never seen before. To the poor, the hungry, the sick, these aliens were saviors. But in villages far from the great cities, whispers grew darker. Farmers reported strange lights at night. Fishermen spoke of boats disappearing. In one small town, a family vanished, without a trace after speaking against the envoys. Governments silenced these stories, calling them rumors. Yet the fear spread like smoke through dry grass. In military bases across the world, soldiers trained harder than ever. They spoke quietly, among themselves, their hands resting on their rifles. They were told not to fire, not to provoke. But deep inside they felt the same chill. Humanity was being tested. One evening, in a quiet corner of the United Nations building, a secret meeting took place. Leaders from 5 powerful nations sat around a small table, their faces grim. They spoke in whispers, away from cameras, away from microphones. "We cannot stop the people from trusting the envoys," said one, "but we must prepare in silence." "Yes," another replied. "If they are true friends, our defenses will not matter. But if they are not—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the room understood. "General." Hale leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "We must watch. We must wait. And when the mask slips, we must be ready." The others nodded, and so a secret agreement was made that night. Factories would not only build machines for peace, but also weapons hidden from alien eyes. Old projects buried for decades would be brought back to life. Humanity would smile at the envoys in the day, but in the shadows, humanity would sharpen its blade. The silver ship still hung in the sky, silent, unmoving, casting its vast shadow across oceans and cities. To the common people, it was a sign of hope. To the leaders of Earth, it was a reminder. Peace had arrived, but peace came with doubt, and in that doubt, seeds of resistance were planted. Weeks passed since the envoys arrived, and Earth had begun to change. The aliens walked freely in great cities, their glowing robes shining like stars in the streets. They spoke kindly, healed the sick, and shared gifts. Machines that could clean polluted rivers in minutes were given away. Crops grew faster in fields touched by alien hands. Hunger seemed to fade. For many, it felt like the beginning of a golden age. Children pointed to the sky with joy. Crowds gathered around envoy ships, begging for miracles. Leaders stood in front of cameras, smiling as they shook alien hands. The world seemed to believe. But beneath the bright surface, shadows spread. In villages in Africa, families disappeared overnight. Entire homes stood empty, tables set, doors open, but no people inside. In the Amazon rainforest, satellites recorded fire burning across vast stretches of jungle. But the flames were strange. Cold blue light instead of red. Fishermen in Southeast Asia whispered of silver craft rising from the ocean, carrying nets, filled not with fish but with people. The envoys denied it all. These are mistakes, they said. Rumors, misunderstandings. Their glowing eyes never blinked, their smiles never faded. Yet the truth could not stay hidden forever. One night in Brazil, a farmer named Gabriel was walking home from his fields when he saw lights above the trees. At first, he thought it was just another envoy ship, but then he heard screams. Heart pounding, he crept closer with his phone in hand. What he saw froze his blood. Black armored figures, taller than the white-robed envoys, moved like shadows between the trees. They carried weapons that glowed red, and with those weapons they herded men, women, and children into cages of shimmering light. The captives cried, begged, and struggled, but the cages held firm. The soldiers spoke in harsh voices, nothing like the soft tones of the envoys. Gabriel's hand shook as he filmed. He hid behind a tree until the ships lifted into the night sky, carrying his neighbors away. Then he ran home, tears blinding his eyes. The next morning, his video was on the internet. The world watched in horror. The proof was undeniable. Humanity saw with its own eyes that the envoys of peace were not alone. Behind their smiles and gifts stood an army, cold and merciless. In cities, riots erupted. People screamed in the streets, burning alien symbols and demanding answers. The envoys stood calmly in front of cameras, their glowing eyes steady. "This is a lie," they said. "Do not believe false images." But the more they denied, the more humans grew angry. At the United Nations, leaders shouted across the chamber. Some still clung to hope, saying the video was fake, a human trick. But others knew the truth had finally shown itself. General Hale stood once again, his voice like iron. "They have shown us their mask," he said. "Behind their peace is conquest. Behind their gifts is a chain. We were right to doubt. And now we must prepare." The chamber fell into silence. No one argued this time. Fear filled the air, but so did something else. A spark of defiance. Across the world, people looked at the silver ship in the sky with new eyes. What once seemed like a guardian now looked like a prison guard. Families locked their doors at night. Soldiers loaded their weapons in silence. Scientists began working in secret laboratories, dusting off old projects long thought impossible. And, yet even in the fear, some still hoped the envoys could be trusted. "Perhaps it is only a small group," some whispered. "Perhaps not all of them are cruel." But deep down, the truth was clear. Peace had been a mask, and that mask was slipping. The world would never see the envoys the same way again. The mask of peace was gone. The video of black armored soldiers herding people into cages spread to every corner of the earth. No matter how much the envoys denied it, no matter how calm their glowing smiles appeared, humanity had seen the truth. Behind the gifts and promises lay chains and slavery. Fear gripped the world, but fear was quickly replaced by anger. In cities, people marched in the streets, chanting against the envoys. Statues built in their honor were torn down. In villages, farmers armed themselves with old rifles and swore they would never be taken. Mothers held their children close, whispering that no alien would ever steal them away. At the United Nations, the leaders of Earth met again. The chamber was different now. No more arguments, no more hopeful speeches about peace. The truth was heavy in every voice. General Marcus Hale stood at the center, his old hands gripping the table. We must face reality. They came as envoys, but they are invaders. If we wait, if we bow, if we hesitate, they will take this world piece by piece. We must unite or we will vanish. For centuries, humanity had been divided by borders, by flags, by language and race. Wars had been fought, blood spilled for land and power. But in that moment, under the shadow of the alien ship, the division seemed smaller than ever before. One by one, leaders nodded. Even rivals who had once sworn never to stand together now spoke with the same fire. From Moscow to Washington, Beijing to London, from the deserts of Arabia to the forests of South America, governments agreed. Humanity would not kneel. Factories that had once built cars and machines of peace were transformed overnight. Assembly lines now forged tanks, jets, and missiles. Scientists who had dreamed of peaceful inventions turned their minds toward weapons, designing defenses no alien had ever seen. In secret, underground bunkers, projects hidden for decades were brought to life. There were whispers of a fleet, ships built in silence, waiting for the day humanity would need them. That day had come. The people were no less determined. In schools, teachers no longer spoke only of science and art. They spoke of survival, of courage, of unity. Children drew pictures of Earth surrounded by fire, but always with humanity standing tall in the middle. Farmers formed militias with their neighbors. Workers stayed late in factories, welding steel until their hands bled. Doctors trained in emergency hospitals, preparing for the war they knew was coming. The envoys watched all of this with their calm smiles. They stood in public squares repeating their words of peace, but their eyes glowed colder than before. When riots broke out, their black-armored soldiers appeared, crushing protests with strange weapons that stunned instead of killed. They thought fear would silence the humans. They were wrong. The more humanity suffered, the stronger its spirit grew. Every person lost to the aliens became a reason to fight. Every family torn apart became a fire in the heart of those left behind. Even the poorest villages, armed with nothing but old rifles and courage, swore they would resist until their last breath. In a quiet bunker beneath the mountains, General Hale looked at a map of the world glowing red with alien presence. His voice was calm but filled with steel as he spoke to the gathered commanders. They think we are weak. They think we will break. They do not understand who we are. We are the children of fire and storm. We were born in struggle, and we do not kneel. The commanders saluted, their faces grim but proud. Across the globe, humanity's armies stirred awake. Old enemies became brothers, old wounds forgotten. The world, for the first time in centuries, was united. The silver ship still floated above Earth, its shadow vast and endless. But now, beneath that shadow, a new fire burned, the fire of humanity's defiance. The invaders had given their warning. Humanity had given its answer. The day came sooner than anyone expected. The silver ship that had hovered above Earth for weeks finally moved. Its surface glowed with lines of light, and the oceans beneath it trembled. Smaller warships, darker and sharper than the peaceful crafts, broke away from its belly and descended toward Earth. The message was clear. The mask of peace had been dropped. The invasion had begun. Above the Pacific Ocean, the first alien fleet appeared. They did not land gently this time. They came like predators, their weapons glowing, their voices demanding surrender. Obey the Union, kneel to peace. Resistance is destruction. But humanity did not kneel. From hidden bases on islands and deep within mountains, humanity answered. Fighter jets screamed into the sky. Missiles tore upward in fiery trails. Submarines, silent for weeks, rose from the dark sea and launched weapons no alien had ever seen. The world held its breath as the first battle of Earth began. The aliens expected an easy victory. They thought Earth was weak, divided, too primitive to resist. But when the first missile struck, the sky itself seemed to explode. A massive alien warship was torn apart, its burning pieces crashing into the sea with a roar that shook the waves. For the first time in history, the envoys felt fear. General Hale stood in a command bunker, his eyes fixed on the glowing screens, showing the battle. His voice was steady. Do not give them an inch. Show them the strength of our world. The human pilots fought with unmatched fury. Jets dived between alien beams of light, dodging with impossible courage. Missiles found, their marks guided not only by machines but by human instinct and rage. Submarines struck from below, tearing holes in ships that no alien thought could be touched. But it was not only the soldiers who fought. On the ground, fishermen used harpoons to attack small landing craft. Farmers lit fires to blind the invaders, scanners. In villages, men and women armed with nothing but rifles and courage stood their ground. Humanity itself had become a weapon. The battle raged for hours. Alien fire turned the skies into storms of light, but humans refused to stop. One pilot, his jet burning, aimed his crippled plane at an enemy ship and crashed into it, destroying, both in a blaze of glory. His name was spoken with pride across radios that night. The world had waited for this moment, and now it spoke with one voice. On every frequency, every channel, humanity sent out a message that echoed across the stars. We are not your cattle. We are not your slaves. We are humanity. And we will not kneel. The envoys tried to respond, but their voices of calm peace sounded hollow now. Their soldiers pressed harder, their weapons burning cities, but the humans kept rising again, and again. For every village taken, 10 more fought back. For every ship destroyed, cheers shook the earth. By the time the sun set, the Pacific was littered with the wreckage of alien ships. Fires burned on the ocean's surface, glowing red against the dark water. The aliens had power, numbers, and speed, but the humans had something greater, the will to fight until the last breath. In the silence after the battle, General Hale looked at the reports. Losses were heavy. Thousands of brave souls had fallen. But humanity had stood its ground. They had shown the galaxy something new, something no alien calculation had predicted. They had shown defiance. The silver ship still loomed in the sky, its vast shadow unbroken. More battles would come, more blood would be spilled, but the first strike was done, and the truth was clear. Humanity was not a weak world to be conquered. Humanity was a storm, and the storm had awakened. The first battle was over, but the war had only begun. The wreckage of alien ships still burned in the Pacific, their smoke rising into the sky like black scars. Across Earth, people buried their dead with trembling hands, but their eyes shone with fire. Humanity had struck back, and the universe now knew they would not kneel, but the aliens did not retreat. They came in greater numbers, their fleets darkening the skies. Cities trembled under their fire. Streets turned to rubble, and the cries of the wounded filled the night. From Asia to Europe, from deserts to forests, the war spread like a storm. And still, humanity fought. In ruined cities, men and women carried rifles through the rubble, firing from broken windows. Children carried water to the soldiers, refusing to abandon their homes. Farmers turned their tractors into armored machines, blocking alien patrols. Even the weakest fought with stones and fire because surrender was no longer possible. Everywhere, the envoys demanded obedience. Their calm voices echoed from ships saying, "Peace requires obedience. Kneel, and you will live." But the people answered with bullets, rockets, and unbroken spirit. Deep beneath the mountains in hidden bunkers, the true secret of Earth was revealed. For decades, humanity had not been as blind as the aliens believed. Nations had built ships in silence, hidden from the world, prepared for the day the stars would bring danger. And now, those ships were ready. From secret hangars, massive steel giants rose into the skies. They were not elegant like the alien crafts. They were rough, armored, built with human hands and human grit. But they carried power unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The first human space fleet launched. Engines roared like thunder, lifting warships into orbit. Soldiers, engineers, and pilots strapped into their stations with steady hands, their hearts beating with courage. For the first time, Earth's armies left the ground not as explorers but as defenders of their world. The aliens were waiting. Their fleets surrounded Earth, glowing with cold blue light. They laughed in their strange voices, mocking the steel, ships that rose from the planet. Primitive machines, they said, on clumsy toys. But when the battle began, their laughter ended. Human warships moved with raw strength. Cannons of fire, missiles of steel, and railguns that could tear holes through mountains roared across the void. Alien ships, built for control and intimidation, crumbled under the storm of human fury. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 alien ships were torn apart. Inside the flagship Resolve, General Hale stood watching the stars burn. His voice carried through every radio, every channel. "We are the children of Earth. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. Fight with everything you are." The words ignited hearts across the fleet. Pilots dove into impossible battles. Soldiers manned their stations even as fire spread around them, and engineers patched holes with their bare hands. Humanity was not just fighting with machines. They were fighting with will, with stubbornness, with the spirit of survival that had carried them through every storm of history. The war spread beyond the skies. On the moon, human bases fired missiles that struck alien cruisers. In the oceans, submarines surfaced and launched payloads that reached orbit, catching enemies by surprise. Even the deserts became battlefields, where mobile cannons fired into the heavens. For the first time, the galaxy faced something it did not understand. The aliens had fought many worlds before, and all had fallen. But Earth was different. Earth refused to die. By the end of the week, space itself seemed on fire. Broken ships drifted like grave markers across the void. Cities on Earth lay in ruins, but their flag still flew. The Envoys, once calm and confident, now spoke with sharp voices. They demanded obedience, but their words no longer carried power. Humanity had shown them something new, something unstoppable. The galaxy had expected fear. Instead, it had awakened fury. The war had raged for weeks, and Earth was scarred. Cities were burned, forests were blackened, oceans churned with fire and wreckage. Every human heart carried grief for the lives lost, but none carried fear. Humanity had fought harder than anyone had imagined. They had struck back with courage, cunning, and an unyielding will. The silver ship still hovered above the planet, massive and cold, its shadow stretching across continents. Its smaller vessels filled the skies and seas, pressing the attack. The aliens believed their power was absolute. They thought humanity would break. They were wrong. From hidden bases and battered cities, humanity's fleet rose again. This was no longer a desperate defense. It was a counterattack. Ships long hidden in mountains, oceans, and deserts now launched in full force. Missiles streaked through the atmosphere, cannons flared like lightning, and warplanes screamed across ruined skies. Humanity was a storm made flesh, and the storm had no master. In orbit, the battle was chaos and brilliance. Alien warships built for intimidation and control were torn apart by railguns and missiles. Ships the size of mountains crumbled in seconds under human fire. Even the flagship, the massive silver crown of the alien fleet, could not withstand the assault. Explosions lit space like a second sun, a violent aurora that shimmered across the darkness. General Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of Resolve, his face illuminated by the glow of battle. He did not shout. He did not panic. He simply watched, and then he gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. Full strike. No retreat. Every weapon. Show them the spirit of Earth. Pilots, soldiers, and engineers responded without hesitation. Every human on every ship fought as if the planet itself flowed through their veins. Fear had been replaced with purpose. Every shot was a message. Every strike a declaration. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would endure. The alien flagship, once untouchable, shook under the relentless assault. Its shields flickered and died. Its energy beams faltered. And then, with a roar that could be heard across the void, the great ship exploded, a cascade of fire and metal raining down toward Earth. The shadow that had hung over the planet for weeks shattered with it. The remaining alien vessels attempted to flee, but the human fleet did not let them. Every escape route was cut off. Every ship that tried to rise from the battle was struck down. Humanity pursued them relentlessly like a tide of fire and steel that could not be stopped. On the ground, the people cheered as they watched the skies burn. Children clapped and danced among ruins. Soldiers embraced one another, crying tears that were part sorrow, part relief, and part triumph. Humanity had faced the impossible, and had survived. The Envoys' glowing eyes, once calm and commanding, now burned with fear. Their voice, the voice of peace, was gone. Humanity had not only defended Earth, they had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. The words they sent back to the stars were simple, unshakable, and unforgettable. This world will never kneel. This world will never bow. We are humanity, and we are unstoppable. Earth was wounded but alive. Cities would be rebuilt. Families would heal. The scars of war would fade. But the spirit of humanity, sharpened in fire and tested by impossible odds, would never fade. Above the planet, the stars seemed to shine brighter that night. For the first time, the galaxy understood a simple truth. Humans were not just another species. They were storm and fire, courage and defiance, fury and endurance. They were unstoppable, and no one, no matter how vast their power, would ever forget it.